So we're here with Miss ZARA Hayes. Thank you so much to take time out of your day to speak with us at the Her Vision Film Festival. How are you doing today? How is the atmosphere over in the UK?
Thank you for having me. I'm okay. It's I mean, it's just crazy time in so many respects, isn't it? So I'm really lucky that I'm here with family, and we're just sort of trying to stay healthy and positive in amidst all of this. But it's obviously the strangest time for the world, and what's going on in America at the moment is just tragic. So yeah, we've been kind of following the news closely.
Yes, yeah. You have a great resume, a great filmography of a lot of documentaries, as well as commercials and commercial features. What kind of started you on this activist or social justice awareness theme in your works?
Oh, that's really interesting, because I guess my thing is always that I want to tell stories, and I want to tell stories that I think, when I come to make a film, I think, do I think this should be in the world? Like, does this need to be said? Because I feel like there's so much stuff in media and films and TV and everything anyway, that I always kind of ask myself that question. And then the things that tend to sort of meet that requirement, a lot of them do seem to be issues that are kind of social justice or kind of activist issues. But it's interesting, I don't consider myself like an activist filmmaker. My focus is always story, and telling a story that I think will engage and move people and grip them, and then to be able to use that to then put the message across in whatever thing that I want to say about the world, to sort of put that in after you've kind of engaged them with the story, because I feel like that's the most effective way to get people. It's like hearts and minds, the kind of thing. So I guess it's just things that I naturally have been drawn to, and then subjects that I've kind of become fascinated by, and I've then started to make a film about it. And then in certain cases you get so involved emotionally and in your life that you never leave those subjects behind. And I'm thinking particularly about a film I made about a building that collapsed in Bangladesh, a clothing factory that collapsed. And I was actually commissioned to make that film by the BBC. They kind of asked me what would be my take on a film for the 1-year anniversary of that tragedy. And so it kind of came to me, but then it had so many things in it that I was passionate about. And it ended up, for me, being a story about kind of like young women in the developing world and their place in like capitalist society. And then, I just sort of then, once we'd made that film, I felt like I couldn't leave it and just let it, sit on a shelf. I kind of wanted it to be out there and seen more. So I kind of sort of started taking on that role of kind of outreach, and with the producer, we kind of got it to educational settings and screenings. So I don't know, I sort of feel like these things get under your skin and they get a hold of you, and then it sort of gets its own life and momentum, and finds its own place in the world.
Yeah, it's seen through your lens. It's especially captivating because you could feel the heart that goes into it, and just beaming that out in the world, and so relevant for everything we're seeing now, everything that every pain, every cause that gets denied, the agitation grows. So we have to face these things, and you do a beautiful job. Another interesting film of yours, The Right to Fight. How did that one come about? How did you find G Money G?
That G Money, actually. G Money, amazing Garrett Olive, who is a young man who from Florida, who basically was an MMA fighter who wanted to have his first sanctioned fight. And on the night of his first ever sanctioned fight, the state of Florida shut the fight down because they were concerned about safety, because he has Down syndrome. And it became a whole disability rights issue about him asserting his right as an individual man to engaging a sport that he wanted to at the competitive level. And so I came across it because a producer who I had worked with in the past, actually on another documentary about young boys who were imprisoned as adults in Indiana, called 12-Year-Old Lifer. I'd made a documentary with this producer before, and he kind of knew the sort of stories that he knows me, and he knows the kind of things that get me excited and engaged. And he'd read about this fight that had been cancelled in Florida, and sort of said, oh, you know, I heard this crazy story, and all he really needed to tell me was that, for me to sort of look it up and go, wow, this says so much, this kind of stands for so much more. And I guess that's the thing, you know, with stories, it's like you have to always, you have to bring them into being as the director, right? You need to kind of like make them happen. And so they need to sort of like almost command your attention. And I feel like with every film I've made, that's what's happened. You know, in some way you stumble across something, whether someone tells you about it, or, you know, you are reading the paper one day and you see a picture, which is what happened with POMS, the movie that I just made. But it's like, it sort of like lodges in your brain, and then it grows, and it kind of calls you, and it won't leave. That's what I find anyway. And it won't leave, and it stays, and you kind of you know, then, okay, I've got to make this in some way. I have to find a way to kind of put this into the world, and that's kind of how I really work with most of my films. And on the couple where that hasn't happened, where it's been more of a kind of job, you know, in the sense of like someone has brought something to me and I've done it, and I've tried to find my own sort of version of it, or kind of find what I think is meaningful within it, they aren't always as successful. I think it's, you know, you have to really really find what speaks to you within that story, because some people are drawn to telling sort of stories about their own life or their own circumstances or their own demographic or whatever. But with me, it's always like I'm always looking out at the world and kind of fascinated by something that I see. And then I guess the process for me is finding what my connection to that is. And like, in a way, every film that you make is a reflection of who you are, isn't it? You know, because it's got something of you in it, because you have so many choices to make as a filmmaker all the time. And even the smallest thing that you do is kind of full of your imprint, because it's, you know, every cut you make, every shot you decide to do or not to do, what you decide to turn the camera onto in the first place is a kind of reflection of who you are, in a way.
Yes, yes. You touched on two things I would like to discuss with you. Is that how you started directing? Were these stories, that just called to you, just that prevalent on your mind that it sparked your whole career? Or how did you begin? And then I'd love to talk about POMS, because I think that's such a great movie and has so much that needs to be said about it.
Oh wow, okay. Well, so how did I get into it? I definitely wasn't one of those people who was like, you know, age 12, I'm going to be a director. You know, that's not who I was at all. And in fact, I studied science at university.
Oh wow.
And philosophy, yeah. But I think I just sort of realized that the thing that I find really meaningful in life, and the thing that I think is really the thing that gets us through life as humans, one of the things is storytelling. And I think it's so powerful. And I mean, I guess you have to really believe in the power of storytelling to take on like such a stupid career, because like it's such a ridiculous job in a way. You know, it's so full of disappointment and risk and inefficiencies and wasted efforts. And you know, there's a lot to kind of hate about our industry in a way, but then you kind of keep coming back to it. and I think that the reason is because you sort of really fundamentally believe in that it's function in humanity. And I think I really do. It sounds really cheesy, but I do believe in it as an endeavor. So I think I've sort of always, I came to the realization that I felt like storytelling was the most important thing. And then I was trying to find the right format for that. And I actually thought I wanted to direct theatre for a long time. And then through circumstance and partly through, because I came through the sort of British system, in Britain, there's a really vibrant and wonderful culture and history of documentary storytelling. And there are opportunities to be like paid to kind of train in documentaries. So it's kind of, there's a real industry there that makes a lot of sense. So that was a way that I could see that I could find a career in filmmaking, because I wasn't from a background where I had independent wealth or kind of money behind me to sort of pay my bills whilst I lived in a big city like London. So I kind of, I also felt like when I was sort of 22 out of university, I was like, to be able to kind of, to make documentaries, to be sort of given a ticket basically to sort of the front row of people's lives is kind of an amazing privilege. And I still feel that today. Like I was just on a call just before this with a producer of a project that I might maybe do later in the year, hopefully. And it's just so exciting to think that you will get to kind of go meet all these people and get your head around this new subject matter. And it's such a privilege. And I think that the sort of chance to learn about humans and humanity and see it up close, and the things you get to, like, to be there on the night that G Money won the fight. I don't even like MMA actually as a sport. I have mixed things about it, but I was just so moved to be there, and I was kind of crying watching it. And it's just ridiculous because I sort of didn't even know if I liked the sport in the first place, but it's just, to have got to know those people and to be there at one of the most important moments in their life is pretty incredible.
Wow. Yeah, such a testament to the human spirit, and so inspiring. How many of us get, so upset, like when a subway is late, or, and yeah, and to overcome all that adversity, just astonishing. And yeah, that's beautifully said. You have a first row ticket to those kind of experiences. That's amazing. Yeah.
If you're interested in people, it's a pretty amazing job, isn't it, to have, like, if you like people.
Yeah.
If you do, then it's a good thing.
Yeah. I really have to praise you too with POMS, because I see, like, in speaking with you now and seeing your other work, you have such a naturalistic take to a story narrative as well as documentaries. It almost seems like that style bleeds in, because you could see all the empowering notes to women and friendship and with women as they get older, and even like the rights of cancer patients in that story. It was just so great. Could you tell a little bit of what inspired you to take on that project, how it came to be? Because I'm sure, like, too, there's women directors out there that go, wow, like a star-studded cast, like, how did she do this? So if you could just speak about any of those points, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you saw all of that in it. It's really interesting because you watch the trailer for POMS and you could be like, oh, it's a kind of Hollywood comedy about older women cheerleading, which it is. But for me, the interest was always from the start to say something about women's roles and like what is acceptable and isn't acceptable for older women, and to frankly to sort of create a movie where you see a group of older women's bodies like on show, and that we all go to the cinema and we watch that on a huge screen, and we see them like having fun and doing their thing, and we celebrate that. Because I came across the story because I was actually in London at the time, sitting on my sofa on a Sunday afternoon reading the paper, and I saw these images of women in Arizona who set up a cheerleading team at their retirement community. And I was kind of completely taken aback by the images. They were very powerful. And I couldn't quite believe it. And I'd never seen anything like it before. So my instinct was oh, that should be a documentary. And like with all these ideas, like I'm saying, it gets under your skin and then it stays with you. And I kind of thought, okay, well, I'm going to make a film about that somehow. And I went to see them. And then as the sort of development period kind of happened, I just sort of really felt like the story needed a bigger platform, and that actually, if you fictionalize it, you could take the truth of the fact that people are doing it, but you could kind of play with it more, and you could create like a movie that kind of would be more widely appealing. And I kind of knew at the time, even back when I first saw the pictures, that it would cause a few raised eyebrows and would kind of like be quite divisive as an idea in some ways, because the cheerleader is such a kind of iconic female archetype in like American history and pop culture, and it's a whole, you know, it's a whole trope, like in porn and everything. Like there's a whole set of baggage that comes with cheerleading, and the fact that these women who are kind of over 65 are just reclaiming that stereotype and just doing it for themselves and having like a load of fun doing it, and you know, really don't care what you think of them or need your approval. I kind of felt like that was a pretty revolutionary message to kind of put out there, because I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, there are kind of feel-good movies about older people, but they're nearly always, I've found, you know, they're nearly always wrapped around the idea of finding romance later in life, and that will be the way that you'll achieve sort of completion, or the way that you'll be fulfilled later in life is through finding a romantic partner. And I just kind of wanted to say something about female friendship, really, and the power of friendship later in life, and that it's really not necessarily about love of that kind, of romantic kind, that it's that it's something that there are other opportunities, and that actually, why can't you be a cheerleader and wear a short skirt? And I kind of found that a really tantalizing and irreverent and kind of a bit rebellious of a message, really. And so I really tried to kind of keep that spirit, and then, you know, got this incredible cast. And, you know, I can't take credit for that, really. That was just, you know, that's credit to sort of, in the first instance, Diane Keaton and Jackie Weaver reading the script and saying, yeah, I want to do it. And, you know, they were just the ultimate dream duo for those two roles. And then once you have those two, everyone wants to work with Diane Keaton and Jackie Weaver. So and, you know, it's sort of, I don't really know what to say to other filmmakers, because I've been in that position of looking at other filmmakers and going, how do you do it? And it's like, it's such a random industry that is so kind of haphazard, and there are no rules. And in this case, it really was like the system did work. Like, we wrote a script, we had an idea, I had an idea, I got producers, we got it to the agents, we got a brilliant casting director, and we got it to the agents of these people. The agents thought that it was worth their time reading the script, and then it's down to the actors, and the actors said yes. So it's kind of, I mean, it will be hard to replicate that again for me on the next project. You know, it's such a unique set of circumstances, I think.
The stars aligned.
Literally, I think the stars did align. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I mean, in a way, it's amazing that does happen sometimes. Like, I used to really think that, you know, no one ever read scripts from people who weren't well known or whatever. Like, I used to really feel like the whole system was stacked against you and rigged, and I don't think it is, actually. Like, I think that I mean, the idea spoke for itself, and I think it was tantalizing enough for these people to sort of give it their time.
Exactly.
I think that's
it is pretty, you know, revolutionary. You know, women claiming the right for their own bodies, for their own enjoyment, not just to show as a product to men, to entice men. And yeah, no, it's a really great film. I thank you for it.
Oh no, thank you so much. I'm so glad. Did you see it at the cinema at the time, or did you?
No, I on Amazon. Yeah, I saw it
Mhm.
on. Yeah, yeah. I'm a bit of a homebody. I know. But yeah, yeah. No, it's really great. Rhea Perlman too was wonderful. Just everybody, you got wonderful performances. What is your rehearsal kind of schedule like? Are you open to actors saying, oh, I think this line, I would say it more, my character would say it more like this?
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah. I mean, rehearsal wise, it's different on every project, but with POMS, it's a low budget movie, so there typically wouldn't be a rehearsal period because just like everything is so to the hour, the money is kind of so tight. But because we had the dance routine, we had to have a 2-week period where we had all the actors in one place learning the routine. So we had a kind of boot camp thing. And so I was able to work with the actors like outside around the dance rehearsals. And I kind of had individual meetings. And with Diane and Jackie, they'd been attached for a long time, and we'd had a lot of work before we got to that point because they'd been attached to the film for a long time. But then when it comes to actually like filming it and blocking it and everything, I found the actors' input. I'm very, very, very open and collaborative, and I think that quashing people's ideas is not the way to get the best out of people, A, and B, like these people have been at it for like a long time, and they've shot scenes many more times than I have, and know kind of like certain things. They would point out things that I hadn't thought of, and I was very open to that. It's always a fine line because obviously you've got to get through the material, and also you do have, if you have a very specific idea of how something should be, like ultimately you need to get that through, and kind of convince them that that's the way to do it. But I sort of feel like I'm always suspicious of, not suspicious, that's not the right word, but I'm not someone who is like, I had the entire movie in my head beforehand, and I knew exactly where every camera placement was and how every scene was blocked before we turned up. Because for a start, often you only lock the locations down days before you actually film the scene, so you've probably only stood in that location for an hour before, and then you turn up and like that in itself is like a huge determining factor of how you're going to film a scene. Let alone how people are feeling that day, what's going on with the weather, what happened yesterday, where are we at? So I just sort of feel like, to me, being open-minded is everything, because, and I don't think that's a way. I don't think you're relinquishing control. I think you're actually like taking control by doing that, because life is messy and unpredictable. And I think if you treat people like partners and collaborators, you're going to get way more out of them at every level, like from the kind of every department that applies to. That's not my style. But that's not to say I don't have really strong views on certain things. So it's a process, isn't it? I think everything's a process.
Yes. Yeah, that important to have that fluidity to bring everything that everyone can to the table and make the project as best as it can be.
Yeah, and embrace it and capitalize on it, and kind of don't be afraid of what people can offer.
Right. Can you talk about as well, I saw your commercials on your website and they're so artistic, and I saw that a lot of them are with Christie's.
Yes.
Can you discuss how that pairing came about?
Yes. A few years ago, I was in London, and Christie's, I'd made some films with artists, and I've collaborated with artists quite a lot in my career, including like I was asked by Tate Modern to make a film with Tacita Dean, who'd been given the Turbine Hall to do a big piece of artwork, and I had to make the documentary about her and with her for that. And I'd make some quite experimental documentaries with artists over the years. And Christie's came to myself and a partner I was working with at the time, Rachna Suri, who had also had an interesting background in kind of more kind of online films and short films. And they sort of said, would you, it's a new thing for them, but they'd always put a lot of money into taking photos of artworks for books, and they really saw the value of photography, but they'd been a bit slower to catch up with video. And actually to really sort of sell a piece of art, you really need to make it capture it in all of its glory. And that's hard with like a 2D with a painting that's kind of flat or whatever. And so they kind of asked, we started kind of making films for them, and then sort of became their informal filmmakers for the really high level, the highest selling, the highest value artworks that they would sell in their post-war and contemporary department between London and New York. Sort of started making lots of films for them, and got to kind of spend time thinking about and looking at the best works of art from the 20th century. Like, I remember a day in New York where we just spent like all day with a Francis Bacon triptych in the Christie's offices, just filming it. Like, what a privilege. This is what I'm talking about the privilege of it. It's like, a Jackson Pollock painting, like on, an Anselm Kiefer, like, just like, where do you want it? Okay, we'll put this light on it. How do you want to film it? And yeah, like, it's pretty special. That was wonderful. Like, it was just such a great, and it came to an end when I kind of had to spend more time in LA, and they don't really do much in LA. It's more London and New York, but they're still making really interesting films, actually, both Christie's and Sotheby's.
Oh, wow.
And the great thing about it is they make them available to people. So it's not just, it serves a dual purpose. Like, yes, they're doing it to try and sell those works to the 5 collectors in the world who might be able to buy which is clearly, like a very exclusive club. But they also, those paintings are of like major art historical significance and cultural significance, and they share those films with the general public and with the world. And I saw that as really valuable. So it wasn't just like making a commercial for something that you didn't care about. It's like something that is intrinsically of value in and of itself,
right?
But then is selling for $100 million to someone got that money.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, no, they're so wonderfully done. Yeah, I commend you. That's so brilliant. I especially loved Warhol with Brando and everything. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I always ask women if you've ever had any backlash or obstacles being a female director. Is it harder to get your voice heard?
Oh man. I mean, it clearly is. I mean, you can't look at the statistics and think that there aren't barriers and obstacles. So I think you sort of, the numbers there speak for themselves, don't they? Yeah. It's difficult when you're someone who is managing to sort of make a living and make a career making films. It's difficult to sort of sit here and bemoan it, because I know that there are obviously lots of women all over the world who are like trying and they're not able to get to that place. But even for, I had a studio movie released last year. It plays out in different ways at different levels, I would say. And at every stage I have, it's very, very subtle how to characterize it. But for sure there are implicit and inherent biases, and there is a kind of dearth of female voices that are making it to a certain level, I would say. I think there's an awareness now of kind of that it is good to try to empower diverse voices of all kinds, but it then, it stops at a certain point in the chain. And my feeling is like, you got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because when you get into the really high budgets and the real money and the real power of like Hollywood, that's when it gets particularly pervasive and obvious that women are not thriving for a whole host of reasons, and not just the kind of power structures holding them back. I think there are other reasons too why women aren't necessarily taking those jobs and getting those jobs. But I'd say even at the kind of like starting at student film level, I think there is something about the PR of the industry that is clearly sort of narrative is what we all do, and there's a there are obviously structural biases that are in place that are kind of stopping women from getting the platforms that they deserve to have, for sure. And then on a personal level, I mean, I could give you so many examples. I've been, you know, fortunate in so many ways, and I've had so many opportunities, and I've been given, I wouldn't say I've been given opportunities, I would say I've fought for them, but at the same time, you know, lots of people fight and don't get them. So I feel very lucky in that way. But, you know, like it ranges from everything from at the premiere of your film being asked, what part did you play in it, darling, by a sort of careless member of the press, to like, because there's just no way, to like being at a dinner party with like lots of other people who work in the industry, one of whom like has known me for years, and when I told them about my movie, they said, that sounds amazing, who's directing it? And I was like, that'd be me. But I mean, that's just such a regular occurrence that I kind of I've forgotten all the times that that's been an issue, you know. Editors, when I was like 28 and I was directing a thing, and a 50-year-old male editor who kind of said, who do you think you are, to me, when I was directing the film that he was employed to be editing. You know, all those kind of things that kind of just, I mean, I could give you so many examples, but it's like, I'm not really sure what the value of talking about them is anymore, because I've talked about this stuff a lot, and I've thought about it a lot, and especially with what's going on now in the wider world as well at this moment, I just think that we should all be motivated to act, and you know, there's a place for kind of cathartic recounting of things that have happened, but I also just think my view on these things is like, it's like a marathon. You just got to keep running.
Yeah.
and enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you know, then don't. And it's shitty and it's unfair, and the world is unfair in so many ways, but there are much bigger injustices as well. And yeah, so I always find that a really tricky thing to answer, because I don't really, you know, there's so much to say about it, but I sort of feel like the real change is in showing that women can assume positions of power within the industry, and really and be distinctive, and not just kind of become this tokenistic woman hiring just because people have heard that it's trendy at the moment, which I think is what's going on a little bit as well at the moment. I don't even want it to be a conversation. I just want to be a director. I don't want to be a female director, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I do, because I am, but I mean, I don't want that to be the kind of first thing in the bio kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And you don't hear male director, you know, or male.
Yeah, of course not. I mean,
Yeah,
of course you don't. Yeah.
No, it's true. You know, it's cathartic to discuss, and it's, you know, people can relate, because I'm sure women who see this will say, yeah, me too, you know. But yeah, the action, the doing of just go out there and make movies anyway.
But I mean, it's over. I mean, I'm contradicting myself now, but it's easy to say just go and do it when, you know, but it's tiring and it's exhausting having doors slammed in your face and feeling like things aren't as easy as they are for other people and stuff. So, you know, I don't mean to be glib about that, because it is real. Like the like I said, the stats are real. Like, you know, 7% of studio movies directed by women, you know. I don't know what the stat was for last year, but that was certainly the year before last. And like, is it because there aren't women out there who could do that job, or who are trying to do that job? Well, clearly not. You know, there's something else going on, and it's about opportunity, going back to the beginning of people's career, whereby every job you do puts you in, every film you make puts you like up to a new level that allows you to take on another kind of film. And it's like, if you can't get onto the second rung, you certainly can't get to the third, right?
Right.
And so I think, you know, it is exhausting, and I don't mean to kind of seem as if I'm trivializing it. I just, where I'm at personally is that I'm trying to kind of focus my energy into, you know, what I can do and change, and like how I can work with other filmmakers to help them if I can, and just try to seize the opportunities that are there, and, you know, make the most of them, and then, you know, keep chipping away at progress. Yeah, because ultimately it's a kind of commercial industry that is risk averse, and I think this is part of the complication when people start talking about film, because it's sort of it's so, people feel it in their souls, and it's such a part of the human condition. But, and that's absolutely true, but the fact is films take money to make, and they take working with the institutions and working with the kind of flawed capitalist system that we're all part of, and that comes with sort of a lot of things to negotiate, and I don't think you just change those overnight. Obviously there are people who completely disagree with this and think you need like to completely start a revolution, but my view is that that change happens more from within, and that you need to kind of work to do the best you can, like whilst kind of changing the system that you're in, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it really does. Yes, even with the part of capitalism, yeah, people, like you were saying, if you don't get the second run, you know, is a studio gonna say, oh, here's $100 million for your next project? Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, and all of it plays into it, you know, who you know, the powers that be, everything. No, so you're right, and it does come from within, and in the meantime, you know, every female artist's work, I think, is another
A chip away at the mountain. I think
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the thing is, we all get hung up on those stories that you read about the overnight successes, and and it's usually a guy who made a 250 grand film and then got given the $100 million film to make. There are, like, if there are examples of that, they're all men. They're usually young white men. But truly, I do also think like those stories are not helpful in general for filmmakers.
Yes.
I think that even like within that system, they are exceptions. So absolutely, like when that happens, it is generally to men, and that's been talked about a lot. But in a way, I wouldn't be trying to argue for the exceptions to the rule, because I think that they're so specific. And it's like when publishers make a big splash about the fact that they paid a huge advance for a book. They only do that because normally they don't pay really very much at all for a book. And so like once every 2 years to make a PR announcement, they kind of spend 5 million on the rights to a book. And it's the same in our industry. I think it's like those stories are a bit of a diversion, I find, because most of it is like, I joined the DGA whilst I was making POMS. And so I've been in contact with a lot more directors that have like, who are kind of, you know, working professional directors in film and TV in the US. And you know, most people, it's like slow progress over a course of a long career. And, you know, there's ups and downs, but they're kind of trying to just keep telling stories and working. And I kind of rather be that like, I'd rather be still doing this when I'm 75 than be someone who is kind of an overnight success and then lives and dies by that sort of PR system. If you know, so that those stories, I just think when I've talked at quite a lot of events with kind of younger filmmakers, or like you know, I've done panels and stuff, and I sort of, people often cite those examples, and I sort of think that they're not helpful actually, because they're a diversion from the reality, which is that for most people, you make a film, you know, if you kind of work hard enough and you're lucky enough, you make another one that's slightly bigger. maybe then you choose to do one that's slightly smaller again. You then go, you just keep trying to go and do whatever going forward looks like for you. And then sometimes, you know, it doesn't go well and you have to take a step back and rethink of how things are. But it's not, you know, this kind of clear, you know, trajectory by any means.
Yeah, no, and even like you're saying with the overnight successes, if you speak to a lot of them and they're honest with you, they'll say, yeah, I was an overnight success, but it took me 20 years for that night to happen. You know, it's exactly like you said, yeah, PR, and it's this, you know, the distraction, you know, kind of the glamour, a lot of like, you know, how actresses and actors are like, oh yeah, well now I'm just gonna go, you know, be in a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio tomorrow because I've just decided to be an actor today or an actress today. And, you know, it's, yeah, no, there's still a lot of, you know, selling the glamour of it in any level, I think, you know, but yeah, no, that was wonderfully said. To have the career of one movie to the next and the longevity is the reward in and of itself for true artists, I believe.
I think so. I think you have to enjoy, that has to be like enough for you. You have to enjoy the process, because I think if you're looking to like external markers, you're not going to be happy, because I know people who've had the whole spectrum of experiences, from winning Oscars to like desperately trying to get their first feature finance. And the only thing I can trace like is that the people who inherently enjoy the process and are motivated to just keep going no matter what are the ones who like seem to keep being the ones who make work that is good. And the people who are kind of in it for that moment just aren't really like prepared to stay around when the sun isn't shining on their face, kind of thing. And yeah, that's kind of my impression. I'm still thinking about all this stuff all the time as well.
Yeah, it really is. It's an internal journey. Yeah, yeah. Congratulations for joining the DGA, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
That's awesome. See, that's
great institution. Yeah. And again, you know, they've, you know, they're aware that they don't have as many, but again, it's like the way you get in is if you do certain work that qualifies, and, you know, they've got a union movies or TV, and who's doing those, they have to be above a certain level. And, you know, it's the whole system that is problematic. But they're a really powerful, incredible organization, and they are very aware of the way the world is, and wanting to kind of adapt to that. So yeah, I'm really proud to be a part of it. But no, they're great.
Fabulous. I'd like to ask you just lastly, because thank you so much for being so generous with your time, if you'd like to discuss upcoming projects that you have in the works, or you want to keep them?
No, I'm sort of in development on a few things, but you know, nothing that's concrete enough to talk about yet. I'm just in that sort of lockdown writing development sort of phase. And actually hopefully my next feature is going to be, on the surface of it, quite different from POMS. It's a thriller, but you know, hopefully I'll get money for that. Just finishing the draft now, so we will see. But no, I just, you know, thanks for inviting me onto this, and I think it's really great what you're doing. And, you know, I just think women have to just support other women in as much as they can.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Thank you so much again, and congratulations. Thank you. You are the change we want to see in the world.
All right, well, thank you.